Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining both me and Andrea tonight. We really appreciate all of you taking the time out this evening to be here to join in on this conversation about the unspoken connection between sex and divorce. It is a very interesting topic, and we really look forward to sharing this valuable information with each and every one of you. Before I start, let me introduce myself. My name is Piya. I am the founder of Piya Law Chambers, a law firm that specializes in family and divorce law. The goal of my practice, or the mission behind my practice, is to advocate for a holistic approach in separation. So what I mean by this is that I aim to provide my clients an end-to-end approach to their divorce. So when they come in, we help them to assess, of course, their legal issues and to settle that. But at the same time, we also provide them with mental health assistance, as well as knowledge in order for them to reach the end of the entire divorce in a better state of mind. I am very, very passionate about mental health, and I advocate very strongly for conscious parenting and conscious coupling amidst divorce proceedings. That is how I actually met Andrea, because we noticed that we both had a very similar interest in understanding relationship dynamics. And we talked about, hey, like, have you ever thought about how sex and divorce relates? How is it interrelated? And we had coffee, and that's how we decided to have this conversation, because I think in Andrea's area of practice, as well as where in my legal practice, I noticed that this is the stigma attached to talking about these things, and there's still taboo surrounding topics like intimacy, relationships, and sex. And together, our goal through this webinar is to foster a more open and informed conversation, and to educate the public about these things so that everyone feels supported and educated. So please feel free to ask your questions. We will address them at the end of our webinar. And let me hand over the floor to Andrea to say a couple of words, and then we can start with our session. Andrea, the floor.
All right, thank you, Pia. So thank you for the introduction of how we met. So basically, like what Pia said, we had some coffee and then we talk about it. And yeah, that's how this webinar come about as well. So I'm Andrea Koh. So I'm a sexologist and also a registered and licensed counselor. Currently, I'm practicing at Rekindle Centre. We are located at Desa Sri Hartamas near Mount Kiara, that area lah. So basically, I do see couples and individuals with sexual issues, relationship issues, intimacy related concern, and things along that line. I do see other cases like the usual anxiety, depression, that as well. But most of my clienteles are more into sexual related issues. So I see individuals and couple, and I help, like what Pia mentioned, is I do see a lot of couples when they come in for session is usually when it's almost the end of their relationship, right? Like we are the last choice already, or the last help in that sense, when things are getting very tension already, or the conflict is very high already, or things like this, like sex is become a sexless marriage, or cheating affair happens, right? Then only they start coming for session. And by that time, we have a lot of work needs to be done to help improve the relationship, to help maybe change what is going on, and see how they can move on from there, right? So that's where we were thinking about this webinar. Hopefully can give some awareness that we can start early. You can come for session early before you even think about divorce, right? You can come in for session first and talk about things, and hopefully you will be able to improve your relationship. Like prevention is better than cure, right? So same with mental health, same with relationship as well. We try to prevent, we try to make it work until it really cannot be helped anymore. So yeah, so I think that's all for me. If you have any question, you can put in the chat box as well, and we will answer it at the end of the session as well.
Thank you, Andrea. The next slide, we've actually put up the QR for this for Slido. Feel free to drop in your questions. Treat this as a very as a safe space for everyone to ask the questions that you may not generally have that avenue to pose this question. So please feel free to ask us anything that you would like.
Yeah, it's an anonymous as well, so you can be anonymous inside there.
Yes. Oh, thank you for clarifying that, Andrea. Yes, it is anonymous. So please feel free to use it to your benefit. Without further ado, let's jump right into our conversation. But before we start, let me just run through very quickly what we are going to cover in this webinar. So we're looking at talking about how marriages fail due to lack of sexual fulfillment. How does the court view this? What causes a sexless marriage? And repercussions under the law. If you commit adultery, we'll speak more about that. And of course, at the end of every webinar, we want to educate and we want to help our viewers so we have practical ways to prevent and resolve this. And of course, at the end of the evening, we have time for Q&A as well. So let's jump right into our webinar. Our first question, Andrea, I think this is something that I think you would be the best person to answer this actually. How common is it that marriages fail due to lack of sexual fulfillment?
So I would say, based on what I have seen and based on the research that you all can see in the slides as well, that it's getting increased. I would say it's getting more and more, right? Even just in the US, like this few of these studies is all in US, basically, of how sexless marriage or sexual dissatisfaction leads to divorce actually, right? And leads to unhappy marriage. Like even people doesn't divorce their relationship, but they are in an unhappy marriage compared to people who actually have better sex life in that sense, or happy sex life, right? Like if you see on this fourth one, this is from the Star and NST, like New Straits Time, and this is Malaysia statistic basically, right? So lack of understanding, infidelity, and interference in law. But I want to focus more on the infidelity and the lack of understanding that is the main reason why people divorce as well. So if you move to the next slide, there's also other statistic as well from other body, like the 2023 government statistic. They don't say why people divorce, but you can see there's an increase. People marriage is reduced and divorce is increased. And according to Telenisa, so Telenisa is Sister in Islam hotline. So this is where the is helping the Muslim couples or individual who have issue in their relationship. It's an NGO-based organization. So based on their finding as well, the top 4 reason of divorce or marriage breakdown, there's infidelity as well happening, right? This shows how important sex is in a marriage, that could be one of the causes of why people actually divorce, right? So consider quite common if every year this is the thing that's happening and it's in the top 5, top 3 and things like that. Even the next slide as well, this one is from one of the law firm that I Googled, and then I managed to saw this law firm actually said that this is one of the one they found as well, the 5 top reason people in Malaysia divorced. And you can see infidelity, lack of communication, lack of intimacy is all related, like a lot of it is related to sex. And even when people come from session for my clients, even not talking about breaking up or divorce, but just coming for session also is because of unsatisfied relationship, especially on the sexual side. So we can see that it's actually quite common. It's just that whether people actually come out and voice out or not, or seek help, we don't know, right? Because we won't talk about this kind of thing with friends and colleague or family, right? We won't tell each other, oh, actually I don't have sex anymore with my partner. We won't say this kind of thing. So people are usually alone in this kind of issue, and eventually when they cannot withstand it anymore, or when they don't know how to solve it, they can't improve their relationship, eventually the only thing comes to their mind is break up only, break up, divorce, right? or Or if they still try, then they'll be like, okay, let's try for couple counseling. Let's go for this. There's one hope. If not, then we divorce already, something like that. Right. So it's actually quite common, and it's very sad to see that sex is one of the reasons actually people break up or divorce in their relationship. Right. I'm not sure how common it is in your side, Pia.
Thank you for a very, very thorough explanation on that, Andrea. And it's actually quite interesting because when we talked about, doing this webinar, I was thinking to myself as well, like, hey, like I was retracting, going back, looking at all of my clients and seeing how many people have actually identified and come in saying that I want a divorce because I'm just not satisfied in bed, basically. And the truth of it is actually a very, very small percentage. And why I say this is because I think there is still a lack of awareness as to how this affects marriages. And I will go on to explain in our webinar how the courts view this actually. So if we can move to the next slide to answer this question, how do Malaysian courts view infidelity and sexual dissatisfaction and things like that? So I would like to share with all of you some of the real life case studies. So these are excerpts taken from Malaysian case law. So it was, me with the help of my intern as well. We did a lot of research on this, and this was what we found on real life case studies of allegations made by husband and wife in the context of sex. So these are excerpts from reported cases in Malaysia, and it identifies the various many different ways that the courts would look at the issues that happen in a couple's bedroom, basically. So let's look at number one. In this case, apparently the husband has alleged that the wife has a recurring history of adulterous activities, and he mentioned that he was unable to satisfy her sexual needs because of her history of adulterous activities in the past. So why I've underlined that is you can see that there is unmet needs, number one. Number two, the wife alleges that they were married in 2011 and the marriage only lasted for 2 weeks because of his sexual wants. Again, this comes down again to unmet, unrealistic or uncommunicated sexual needs, number two. Number three is a case where the wife claims that she was given rigid house rules and very specific and early times for dinner and bed, which she claimed was because the husband wanted ample of time for sexual intercourse with her on a daily basis. So number three, you can see that there are differing libido. The sexual desires of each party is different. So the wife in this case claims that the husband wanted more sexual intercourse than her. So that's number three. And then we'll go to number four, which is the husband threatening that he would commit suicide if the wife was not able to satisfy him sexually. And he has also asked for abnormal and rough sex, and she had to avoid it. So this is uncommunicated sexual desires. So in this case, the wife, the husband did not communicate to her exactly what were his expectations regarding their bedroom activities. And lastly is the wife was having some gynecological problems, and having sex was very uncomfortable and painful for her. And she often felt like the husband was forcing himself on her. So this, you can see, would be a medical concern, i.e. vaginismus. I think maybe, Andrea, you can talk a little bit about this later. So why I wanted to bring these excerpts and show our viewers today was to make everyone understand that this is a very practical problem. And this has been raised in court. This has been brought forward by parties in court, but they just didn't really have the name for it. They didn't really know that this was something that they could do something about. Neither did they know that if they had identified these issues from the beginning, if they had nipped it in the bud, that they would have potentially may be able to salvage their marriage. So in our webinar, we are going to be talking a little bit about how do we actually identify these things and how can we then prevent it from deteriorating one's marriage. So these issues will crop up in marriages or relationships at some point or other, but with the right knowledge and knowing that there are ways to resolve this and how you can communicate respectfully with your partner, I think we will be able to move towards a more understanding marriage dynamic. Next slide, please. So I've just put this excerpt here, but maybe our viewers can take note of the case. But essentially why I've put this in here is to let everyone understand that the courts are very progressive as well in recognizing that sex is not just for procreation. So maybe 20 years ago, when we talk about sex, considering the taboo surrounding it, it was always about, okay, to have a child, and you're not supposed to be talking about it if it's not for that. But in a 2018 case, the court has actually given recognition that sex is an important part of marriage, and it is not just for procreation. The court also took into account how, from a woman's perspective, why is it important to have a healthy sexual relationship with a husband? Because it is important for her self-esteem, for her confidence, and for a sense of security in the marriage. So it is, I think we are in the right day and age at this point of time to have very open conversations about these things, as the courts in Malaysia have also progressed in that direction. Next slide. So the most common situation when sex comes into play in family courts would be allegations of adultery. So adultery under the law is defined as the voluntary sexual intercourse between a man and a woman who are not married to one another. And so if you actually found out that your husband or your wife is having an affair with another person, you will then be entitled to file for a divorce in court. So that is essentially what it means. However, it is you require quite a high burden of proof to establish this, and I'll go on later in the webinar to share with you what is considered good evidence and what is considered a bad evidence in establishing adultery. But basically, the topic of sex is interrelated when we talk about allegations of adultery in court. Next slide. So how do you prove adultery in court? So there's 4 ways on proving if your spouse has had to prove to the court that it was due to your spouse's extramarital affair that has led to the marriage to break down. So we've got circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is basically your photographs, your videos, your private investigator reports. Those are circumstantial evidence that you can combine and prove that there is indeed an extramarital relationship there. When we go to B, it would be evidence of non-access and birth of children. So this would be cases for women where, for example, the husband has been abroad for 5 years and the wife got pregnant. So it's very obvious that there is no access to him, to her, hence the birth of a child that's not his. So that is what we mean by B. Point C would be contracting of some form of venereal disease from an external source. And lastly would be confession by the husband or the wife themselves. So these are considered evidences that you will need to prove adultery in court. Next slide. What was not accepted in court? So if you can see on the screen, screenshots of video calls and WhatsApps are not the best evidence. So the judge actually had dismissed a case because it was just considered to be mere screenshots, and the court wasn't satisfied or convinced by that. What was also not considered evidence was images of the third party and the husband, I believe, in stages of undressing and things like that. But the judge did not accept this as evidence as well because it didn't explicitly show sexual intercourse. So when you want to bring about an adultery claim in court, you need to prove that there has been sexual intercourse. So pictures of parties holding hands or being intimate is not sufficient. It's important that there is an act of sexual intercourse. Next slide. So what is accepted in court then? So if you look at number 1, obviously the one that's going to carry the highest weight is the confession or the admission from the party themselves. Number two would be reports from licensed private investigators. So as long as they are licensed and they have, adhered to all the necessary requirements, a report from a licensed PI will be sufficient. Number three, of course, when there is a birth of a child, the birth certificate to prove that the child was born out of wedlock is another one. And last but not least is pictures or photographs or proof of a traditional wedding ceremony held between two parties. So these are examples of what is accepted in court as evidence of adultery. Next slide. So tying that with our question number three, Andrea. So I talked a little bit about how do the courts view sex, and it always relates to having an affair. So basically an extramarital affair. And that comes down to my question about why do people have extramarital affairs? I'm pretty sure there's so many people who come and ask you this question, maybe in your sessions and things like that. So maybe you can tie it to question number three, which is, what causes sexless marriage, and is it, so do people have extramarital affairs because they have a sexless marriage? So maybe you can address that for us, Andrea. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Piya. And what you have talked about just now was quite interesting as well. When you talk about the adultery, the evidence must be sexual intercourse only, is it? For them to really say that this is a case to talk about in the court.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Okay, so holding and all those is not enough evidence for them. I see. Okay. So basically, yes, like what we mentioned, why people have extramarital affair or why people cheat, why people have affair, usually it's this a lot of these few reasons, which is sexual dissatisfaction. The main thing is sexual dissatisfaction. Either one partner dissatisfied or both partner is dissatisfied and no one communicate about it. Or maybe one person try to communicate, but the other person doesn't listen or doesn't want to do anything about it, or they just argue all the time, right? So that is the number one reason usually for why people end up finding someone else, someone outside their relationship to satisfy this need. Other things could be maybe stress, like what I have clients who told me that the reason they cheat was also because it's just for physical release, right? It's nothing to do with love or anything. It's just physical release because they feel stressed that the only way they need it to be released is to have sex with someone, right? But if their partner doesn't want to have sex with them, that's where they feel that they need to have sex outside. And this could be, when I say sex, it could be maybe just go to visit the massage parlor, maybe, right? Or just go for prostitute, sex worker, those kind of things. It doesn't even need to be having love or with other people, a regular party. It's just a one-time thing sometimes, right? So that could be another reason why they need to go out. But another reason why people have sexless marriage could be because stress of work, financial stress, family stress, right? Or maybe kids, like you have kids, then you are very stressed or very tired that you don't have that mood. You don't have that feeling of wanting to have sex with each other, which I heard a lot from couples who's having kids. When they start having kids, that's also one of the reasons why they come into session, is because they say they have less sex already, or they don't even have sex anymore after they have kids, right? So that's where it drops your first you have sexual dissatisfaction, then slowly you reduce sex, then after that you become a sexless marriage for the next few years, right? So some other reason that could cause people to do this as well is because of health issues. Sometimes when you have health issue, certain health issue or certain sexual health issue, it will causes some challenges in having sex with your partner, right? And this is something that we need to come into understanding. That's why communication is important, because if you don't communicate how to accommodate each other health, then it's hard. It's hard for you to enjoy sex together if you can't even accept that you have health issue and we need to adapt to that changes in life, right? Like for example, just now Piya talked about vaginismus, right? So vaginismus is one of the sexual health issue whereby women will have difficulty to have penetrative sex because it's very painful, especially at the entrance when they want to go in and have penetration. It's a very painful process for them, or they have very high anxiety towards penetration, right? So end up they can't even have any attempt. And it's not just for penis, it could be for finger as well. Tampon also cannot go in. It could be for gynae as well, right? So it's a sexual health issue. And things that can, and another type of sexual health issue is erectile dysfunction, right? That it could be because of psychological, but it also could be because of health, like medical health, right? Maybe you have high blood pressure, maybe you have heart issues that the medication may cause you to have some issues as well, right? Some sexual health issue. So all these things we need to come into an understanding that if we have all this kind of issue, how can we communicate and how can we find a balance in terms of satisfying each other in our sexual need? But a lot of couple, they don't really talk about it. That's why they just go out, find other people, that's all. And they just hope their partner doesn't find out about it, right? So that's the bad thing, right? When you hope that your partner doesn't find out because you don't want to hurt your partner, but when they find out, you actually hurt them more for lying, and the trust is being broken, the betrayal is happening, right? So other issue could be relationship problem. When you have argument, tension in your relationship, who want to have sex, right? You have no mood want to have sex with your partner. You see your partner also want to fight only. Of course, you wouldn't want to have sex, right? But they are couple. You don't surprise when they are couple who can still have sex even though they have tension with each other, right? And because sometimes sex is the thing that calms down their nerve. Some people can have sex with each other, even they are angry, they are hate each other, but they still can have sex because the touch. When we have sex with each other, we actually involve a lot of touch and hormones, right? And that calms our nerve down. So that's why sometimes you may feel better with your partner after having sex, even though you were arguing, hating each other before that. But after sex, you'll be like, oh, like it's okay, like we are okay, right? Until the issue come back up again. It's because of the hormone and the touching feeling. It soothes your nervous system down actually, right? So aging is another thing. Trauma is one of the important thing to take note, because when we have partner who have sexual trauma, for example, right, sexual abuse and things like that, we need to understand that this is something heavy and sensitive that we cannot force our partner to be okay with it in a very, how to say, in a very quick timeline. In that sense, some people need longer time to heal from this trauma, even though you may see like, yeah, a bit only like you just got harassed in the office, for example, people that just touch you, right? It's like, why is that? Why because of that you cannot have sex with me anymore? For that person, it's very traumatic, right? And we need to respect that, even though there's no physical intimate kind of sexual trauma, but it's still a trauma for that person, right? And that also can cause another person to not being able to have sex with their partner anymore because of that trauma. And we need to respect and understand that and help our partner to heal from that trauma before we talk about let's have sex, right? So a lot of partner also need to understand this kind of thing. If not, then that's where you will go out and find someone else, because you feel like, yeah, my partner has this kind of issue and then cannot, it's her or his problem and he's not doing anything, so I'm going to find someone else, right? That's not a good way to view it, right? So medication also, like I mentioned, sometimes when you have health issue, you have medication, it will also affect your libido, like antidepressant medication is one of it. It will affect lifetime factor. So if your lifestyle is a very, how to say, inactive or maybe too busy, then that also will take in your time. Like you won't, for if you are not focusing on your personal time and your couple time, you only focus on work all the time or any other things, like you focus on other things, that also will cause you to have sexless marriage as well. And of course, lack of sexual knowledge. This is quite common actually in those that I met. Like sometimes the reason why people have sexual dissatisfaction is because they have lack of sexual knowledge. They didn't know that they can do this kind of activity. They didn't know that sex is viewed this way. They didn't know that they can try this thing. Or like for women, they didn't know that, oh, I also can feel orgasm, is it? Like, oh, I also can ask for my sexual needs, is it? Like, there are people that is still out there, even though we are in this modern world, but there are still people who don't know about this information because we don't talk about it. We don't tell women that, oh, you have your sexual needs, also you have sexual rights as well. You can ask for your sexual need, right? You can let your partner know how you want to be satisfied. we don't talk about this, and that's where a lot of sexual dissatisfaction happen, because people don't know that they can voice it out. People don't know they can ask question, right? And that will lead to, for the next slide, is that's where it will lead to all these issues. So people will seek massage parlor, porn. People will be addicted to porn because they keep on masturbate since they can't have sex with their partner, right? Or it will cause more relationship issues. So sometimes sex could be the reason you argue. Maybe other thing in your relationship is so good, but you start arguing because of the sex as well, right? And then it will cause breakup, separation, divorce, right? So there's a lot of things that could cause it. But if we know how to deal with it, that's why later on we will talk about it. If you know how to manage it, how to prevent all these things from happening, you may actually be able to save your marriage from sexless marriage to a have sex marriage. Okay. Yeah, so I think the next question that I actually wanted to know from Piya is, like, under the law, right? What is the consequences, or how is it being punished, I guess, in a sense, right? Is there any punishment actually for this kind of thing?
Yes, thank you, Andrea, for explaining about your view on sexless marriages, and it's actually quite eye-opening for myself, because I think earlier in the beginning of the session I put up the scenarios where it was excerpts from case law basically,
Mm,
but we just didn't have a name for it.
yeah.
Because then again, I think it's lack of sexual awareness, right? Knowledge. But then as you're explaining what leads to sexless marriages, and I tie it back to those scenarios, I think that all of it has actually got a name to it. And when something's got a name to it, there's ways to overcome it. So that part of it is quite liberating and empowering to know. And I hope that our viewers feel the same, because I think at the end of the day, when there's a problem and you know that there's a name for this, I can Google this up, I can ask someone about this. It's quite common. I think that's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you for
Yeah.
identifying those points and explaining them one by one. Appreciate that. Coming to the question that you just posed to me, which was the repercussions if you commit adultery. Before we go into that, I first want to I know that there's a lot of misconception. The word adultery and the word infidelity is used interchangeably, but they essentially have different meanings. So when we talk about infidelity, so infidelity relates to any form of unfaithfulness on one party or breach of trust. So it could be a physical affair, of course, but it could also include emotional affairs, cyber affairs, and things like that. So that's infidelity. So you don't actually have to be married to have committed infidelity. But for adultery, the definition is basically a married person having voluntary sexual intercourse with someone other than his or her spouse. So just to highlight that distinction between the terminologies, like they're often used interchangeably, but they essentially have two different meanings. So now we're going to talk about adultery. So in the context of a married person. So next slide, please. Okay. So infidelity is not considered a crime in Malaysia. So, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to go and have affairs right now. So essentially what it means is that it is not a crime. So it is ethically wrong, but it is not a crime under our penal code in Malaysia. So you cannot be prosecuted for having an affair, basically. But in the context of divorce and family law, having an extramarital affair won't affect how much you can claim in terms of the assets and the house and things like that, but it might affect the amount of maintenance. Maintenance is the amount of money that your husband would give you after the divorce. So in the event that it's proven that the wife had an affair, it may affect the amount of alimony or maintenance, we call it, that she can claim under the law. And there are other repercussions of having extramarital affairs. It wouldn't be on the person who committed adultery. It would be on the third party. So it's actually quite a big thing. So what happens usually in court is when one spouse finds out that the other spouse is having an affair, the first thing they will do is get the name, get the IC number of the person that their spouse had the affair with, and automatically want to file a divorce in court and cite them as a third party, which you can. because the law allows you to claim for damages against this third party. So just to highlight, the individual who commits adultery with the spouse will be named the co-respondent. So you will have the petitioner and you will have the respondent. So for example, if it was the wife who committed adultery, the husband will be petitioner, respondent would be wife, and the man that she had the sexual intercourse with would be the co-respondent. And what will happen is the husband will be able to claim for damages. Damages is equivalent to money, will be able to claim damages from the co-respondent. And the amount as to how much he can claim is purely at the discretion of the court. I'll explain in a while the amount that we've gone to. But just before that, just the previous slide again. So the damages, the intention would be basically to restore the husband in this case to the situation that he would have been in spite of the adultery. So it's basically to restore him back to his original situation. So coming back to the golden question, how much does the third party have to pay if you were found guilty? So these are from real life cases actually. Next slide. Okay, so there's this case, the most recent one is in 2023. In this case, the court awarded 70,000. That's a lot of money. So 70,000 that the third party had to pay, I believe in this case, had to pay the wife. Because, and the court also took into account that the husband had the affair when the wife was actually pregnant. So he actually abandoned his wife and had an extramarital affair. The court took into account the amount of trauma that this would have been inflicted on her as the wife to have gone through this. The court awarded 70,000. And then we've got another case in 2022, which was even higher, 100,000. And lastly is this case in 2022 as well, which is 150,000. That's by far one of the few very high amounts of damages that's been awarded in court. So again, just to highlight to our viewers, how the courts decide on how much money to award the spouse would be based looking at how bad how bad the entire breakdown of the marriage was, how was the relationship of the parties before this third party came into their lives, and also the amount of trauma that the spouse that who found out about the affair, what they had to go through. So this is a very this is just for our viewers to know what is the amount, because oftentimes I get people asking me, oh, okay, so if somebody had an affair, what do they pay? 5,000 ringgit, 6,000 ringgit fine? The answer is no. It actually ranges. It's actually a pretty hefty amount. You're looking at 70, 80, 90, even touching 150,000. Of course, there have been cases where the courts awarded 20,000, but then again, it depends on a case-by-case basis. Next slide. So this is something that in the midst of my research, actually, I found this very interesting findings in court, and it's actually excerpts from cases. But why I wanted to put it here was because I was actually quite, I think it was something that was very positive that I wanted to share to our viewers. This is stated by the judge herself, where I bold in the part that I bold, which is that the judge acknowledged that marriage is not all sunshine and roses, and effort is required to make a marriage work, as marriage itself is a work in progress. So this ties up to what Andrea was mentioning earlier, which is communication, basically. So if you want a healthy marriage with with emotional intimacy, with sexual intimacy, effort needs to be put in. Like it's impossible to have a long-lasting happy marriage when one does not put effort into it. So it was very refreshing to know that this has been noted down by the courts themselves. And another one, as you can see, is the other excerpt is that we now come to that which is trickier to decide, involving as it does matters of the heart. How would one know what happens behind closed doors? So this is also refreshing to read, because the courts, despite just looking at something black and white, do you have evidence for this? Do you have evidence for that? The courts also take into consideration the fact that sometimes what happens behind closed doors, what happens in the most intimate parts of our lives, which is in the bedroom, is sometimes just not known. End of the day, it will basically be only known by the two parties involved. So whatever allegations put forward by one another when you're accusing, when you bring up the issues of sex in court, unfortunately, it's something that we can't really prove, because how do you prove that it was a sexless marriage, or it was because of this? that you were not satisfied? What is the measure to that? So I think these were interesting findings, that I discovered during the research, and I thought that I would share it with our viewers, because I think the goal is to move towards having more open conversations about these things, so that we are able to address this from the get go, and we will know exactly which professionals we should meet, who can we speak to if we are encountering a stumbling block in our sex life, and that there's nothing to be ashamed of, because the truth of it is everybody goes through it. Every single one of us go through that, but it's just that maybe we don't really know how do we tackle these things. So I will go to the next slide, which I believe is the question for Andrea, which is coming back to how we want to give back, which is how do we actually prevent and resolve this, Andrea? In your experience as a sexologist, I think you see so many people coming through your door when they present to you this situation of their spouse either having an affair or that they are sexually dissatisfied. How do you help them, and what can they do?
All right. So thank you for sharing that. And it was quite interesting when you said that the third party. So basically the third party is the one paying the damage, is it? Not the husband or the wife.
No, it's actually the third party.
It's very interesting. Okay, this is something new for me, and I think it's new for a lot of the audience as well here to know that actually the third party is the one who need to pay the damage to what it caused to the family, right? To that relationship. All right. So but also what I'm hearing as well, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing as well to bring it to court, right? Because it's about sex, right? It's something that happened in the closed door, like you say, like it's a closed door. Sometimes it's very hard to prove as well. But if you do have the evidence, then you can bring it to court, right? If you don't have much evidence, that's the part that's a bit more tricky. How do we go about then that after that, right? So in terms of practical ways to prevent or resolve this, there are couples who, when they found their partner is cheating or infidelity, they do want to save their marriage, right? And people will ask, can we actually save our marriage if we found our partner do this, right? Actually, you can still save your marriage, because at the end of the day, like what Piya have mentioned, the work, the commitment, do you actually want to put in the work to rebuild your relationship or not, knowing that one person has break the trust in the relationship? Are you willing to work together as a couple, right? As a couple, not one person only, not just that person, because he's the one who do the cheating, he need to do all the work. No, 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 it's two-person, the person in the relationship. Because usually, like we mentioned just now, some of the reason why people cheat, why people have infidelity is because there's usually other reason, other factors that also play a role in the relationship. It's not just the sexual urge, it's not just the sexual desire to have sex with someone. It also could be other factors that is in your relationship, that's happening in your relationship, that is causing the tension and the distance and the lack of sexual intimacy, that eventually one party give up and they decided to do something outside. Or sometimes it could be just a splash of impulsivity, right? And then after they did it, they really regret and come and be honest, come clean to their partner about it, right? Those who usually come clean about it is the one that really will try hard to save the marriage or save the relationship. Actually, is whether the other party willing to trust again. That is the difficult thing. So relationship can be saved if you work hard, if you want to rebuild, because the foundation is break already, right? You have break the foundation, your house has broken. It's like being a quick, yesterday there's a quick happen to your house. So are you both willing to break are you both willing to actually work together, because you need to rebuild your trust again? It could be a 5-10 years marriage that you have built, and then that one incident caused the break, right, in your relationship. Are you willing to rebuild again, start over again from that 11th year of your marriage, right? That is the work that a lot of people find it very difficult to do. But if you can actually do it, it can work. Actually, it can still be safe. You can actually you may end up become a stronger couple after that, because you go through worst thing that can happen in a relationship, and you manage to fight through it together as a couple, right? The other question that people usually ask is, can I trust that my partner will not do it again, right? That's the other thing that we usually afraid. If I give this person another chance, how can I trust that this person doesn't do it again? Well, at the end of the day, it comes back to trust. It comes back to, can we change whatever is happened in the relationship? If you're not going to change the pattern in your relationship and you go back to your old pattern, yes, very high chances, I will also tell you, high chances the person will cheat again. But if you actually tried your best to change the pattern in your relationship, change what is not working previously that caused this to happen, then there is hope that it will not happen again, right? So that's how we need to see it. If we are going to go back to our old pattern, I also cannot promise you that the person will not cheat. The person may cheat again because nothing changed. So the person also will like, what's the point? What's the point? I'm not cheating if there's nothing changing in the relationship, right? Even that person also will feel like unfair for them as well. So we can go to the next slide. So basically, one of the things that I like to tell people is that sex, whenever we talk about sex, it's not just about sexual intercourse, actually. Sex is any sexual activity that we can do together as a couple, right? Because a lot of people tend to link sex equals sexual intercourse, and when they don't get sexual intercourse means they don't have sex, right? And usually that's the reason why people stop having sex, because they're like, oh, we can't have intercourse, we can't have penetration, or he can't get hard, or she doesn't let me go in, or it's painful, right? So we don't have sex anymore, right? But that's the only thing you can do in sex. Like, you can do many other things. You can still have foreplay, you can still touch each other, you can still have mutual masturbation if you can't have intercourse. There's many things you can still do, because the most important thing that we want to focus on is to create intimacy, right? So I can move to the next slide. So basically I every time tell my couples is that start by touching each other again. We don't talk about whether you can have intercourse or not, whether you can actually reach to the bedroom and have sex or not. Let's talk about, do you actually touch each other? Right? How often do you touch each other? How often do you hold hand? How often do you hug each other? How often do you cuddle with each other? How often do you kiss each other? Is it just a peck in the cheek or peck in here? Right? And then, okay, bye-bye. Then at night, peck again, peck again. Is that enough, right? Is that enough to feel that closeness? Because sex is all about connection and intimacy and closeness, right? So if you don't feel that, that's where your sex become less and less. And that's where there's no urge to want to have sex as well. Because it's like nothing, you don't feel anything, you don't feel any spark, right? We always talk about spark in a relationship, but if you don't touch each other, you won't have that spark anymore, basically. So start by just doing small things, just cooking together, cuddling together, spending time together, more intimacy, more touching happening. That will actually help you to feel more needs of wanting to do more after that, right? This is like the basic things. So next slide, I will explain a bit more in terms of some of the factors that usually I will take into consideration when couple comes to session. One is your own personal life. So basically what it means is that, right, so in terms of personal life, it means that what are the things that indirectly affecting your sexual life. So this could be your work stress, your lifestyle, right? It could be your priority. You're not putting relationship as priority. So these are the things that could cause you to have lack of motivation to have sex with your partner, right? Number two could be relationship issue, like I mentioned just now, argument, tension, unresolved resentment. All these things can build up, and when you see your partner, instead of feeling like, oh, he or she is very sexy, very nice to touch, no, the first thing come to your mind, oh my god, this person make me so angry when I see, right? How are you going to have sex with the person, right? So that need to be resolved. You need to resolve your relationship issue if you want to have sex with each other. And the third one, sex and sexuality. So this could be your like sexual knowledge, basically, or your belief. So there's a lot of people when they come to session, in my experience, is like they will have negative belief about sex. Maybe they think like, oh, sex is just for my partner pleasure, not for me one. Or sex is just for reproduction, not for fun one, not for pleasure. Then if you view sex like that, how are you going to have pleasure? How are you going to enjoy sex? End up sex is equal chore. You only think it as a work to be done. If we think it as a work, do you enjoy work actually? How many people actually enjoy going to work? Not many of us. So if we think sex as work, right? And if you don't enjoy work, then you won't enjoy going to have sex with your partner, because to you it's like it's just another work that I need to do in relationship. Like so tiring, so much work to do. I need to do foreplay lah, need to do this lah, need to open clothes lah. Yeah, so many things to do. Then you won't want to have sex anymore. So it's how we view sex as well. It will affect the way you view your sexual relationship actually. And lastly is basically more specifically to your partner. Like what are the things you don't like about your partner? Could be maybe the body smell, could be the way they do that, they satisfy you, the way they touch you, they lick you, maybe you don't like, but you never communicate it to your partner, or your partner, or maybe you try to communicate, but your partner doesn't get the hint, or maybe he or she doesn't understand how to do it better, right? So that can actually be resolved if we find a better way to communicate with each other, to help us understand how can we improve our sexual life. So it could be around any of these factors, or all of these factors come together actually that cause the sexual issue. Right? A lot of the time from my experience, it's usually a bit of everything one. Everything a bit will come into play one that affect the relationship. So there's a lot of things to do actually when it comes to sexual issue. It's not just one thing to handle. A lot of things that we need to talk about when it comes to sex therapy as well. Yeah, I think that's all for me. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, wow, this is very interesting. But just out of curiosity, Andrea, just a question from my end that I would like to know actually. So when couples come in with like for example, unresolved issues from either partners from their past and things
Yeah.
like that, do you work? Is this something that both, of course, the person who's going through it will have to put in a lot of work,
Mhm.
but is it also the partner's duty to also kind of assist them in that healing process, and will it help if that partner is more understanding or more empathetic to their situation? Like how will that work? Like, is it always better to have your partner on board as well when you're going through sex therapy?
Yeah. So usually for sex therapy, especially if the issue involve both party, I would always recommend couple therapy for them. But even if they come in even though if they come in individually at first, right? Some after a while, maybe one session, two session, then if I see that the issue is actually something that I need both of them to come in to hear from the other party to understand what's going on, then I usually will recommend couple therapy instead of just you come in individually. But in terms of things like unresolved problem with past experience, right? Maybe it could be sexual trauma, for example, right? With past ex-partner, maybe sometimes having your partner around is more to understand, is more to get the picture so that your partner will understand, oh, that is why he or she doesn't want me to touch in a certain way. It was because she or he has a trauma last time, right? So sometimes having that knowledge can help how the partner touch the person maybe, or view the person in that sense, instead of viewing like, oh yeah, my partner doesn't love me, actually I'm not sexy enough, I'm not good enough maybe. But actually that could not be the issue. It could be just she or he may be very sensitive in certain things that you touch, certain area you touch because of some past trauma, right? So certain issue, especially when it can help the other partner to understand, is actually good for both parties to be in the session. Even like I give another example that's not related to sex, but it's more on like attachment issue kind of thing. Like for example, like the partner have maybe bad relationship with their families, right? Every time argue all the time, and then the way she react is maybe avoid, for example. And then when they come to talk together as a couple, she doesn't know how to react as well whenever they need to communicate. She just avoid, right? But she doesn't know that to her, this is how she always avoid, how she keep the peace of the relationship. But to the partner, no, this means that you don't like me, you abandon me, you are not communicating. And having that awareness for the couple to see that her behavior is actually come from how she has been brought up, right? This is how she has always been dealing with things. So to give that awareness that this behavior is actually not helpful now. Maybe it was helpful last time for you to deal with what has happened in your life. But currently, in your relationship, this behavior is actually hurting the relationship. And we need to find ways to, instead of avoid, to come in as a couple to talk about the issue. Because when you behave this way, your partner will think that you are abandoning him or abandoning this relationship, which is not her intention actually. It's just her way of dealing with things, right? So having both sides in the session can help give this awareness. Then if really we need to do like a very deep trauma related kind of process that we don't need a partner inside, then we would usually can either we refer it to individual for individual session just to focus more on her personal stuff, then continue with the couple on the couple stuff only. Yeah, so it's case by case as well. We see what is the case, what is the causes of some of the issue in their relationship, then we will go accordingly to which way, what kind of therapy we can recommend for them.
Oh, thank you, Andrea, for addressing that question. I believe we probably may be at the end of our session. Can I? Yes, we are. So now we are gonna open the floor to our participants. I believe there was a question earlier that was posed in the chat.
Yeah, in the chat got one. You can answer that one, and I'll look through to some of the one in the Slido.
Okay, perfect. So to answer the question in the chat, let me just open that up. Okay, so there was a question asked, what if the third party cannot afford to pay the damages? Okay, that's actually a very interesting question. So what happens usually in court is, of course, you're suing the third party. So the person who has to pay would actually, the fault, in a way, how the court would look at it is that it's the third party's fault. But the courts wouldn't really scrutinize where the money is coming from. So essentially where I'm trying to come from is that even if it's the third party that has to pay, even if she can't afford it, she has to pay, and oftentimes it would be the spouse that she was having or he was having the affair with would assist. So there have been many cases where, of course, the third party wasn't financially in the capacity to make the payments, but that was when the husband in that case was having an affair with the woman. She couldn't pay. He stepped in and he made the payments on her behalf. So to answer your question is, of course, the courts would take into account, their nature of their job, how much they're earning and things like that. But that's not the primary factor. The courts would still emphasize more on the fact that the marriage had broken down due to the interference of this particular third party, and that they have to pay damages to restore the position of the spouse who found out about the cheating. So where the money comes from is not the court's primary concern. It's more about having some sort of imposing a fine, I would say, or imposing some sort of putting a monetary value to the breakdown of the marriage.
So basically, the party themselves need to find ways to get the money,
Yeah,
right? It's like how you kena summon police, like in that sense.
Exactly. So like when you
Okay.
get the summon, they don't really inquire as to, what is your financial standing, whether you spent 5,000 last month and you have no savings. Truth of it is, if you have to pay, you have to pay. You made the mistake, you have to pay. So I think that's the position. Oftentimes it's the party, the spouse that they were having an affair with, that's when they would step in. And oftentimes actually the third parties would ask the spouse to pay because, hey, look here, like, you didn't tell your partner about the affair. Why am I needing to pay? So the responsibility, if you ask me personally, I think that the responsibility is actually on the spouse, because it's the spouse that has this relationship of trust with the partner, not the third party.
Yeah, it actually, I also was thinking like, how come it's not the person that did the spouse that did the damage in that sense, right? That is the one not getting the fine, but it's the person, the third party is the one getting the fine. Because sometimes the spouse may not tell, right? May not tell the third party that they actually married, and then suddenly they found out and they got caught, that kind of thing. And the third party still be the one end up paying the fine, which is a bit unfair.
But I think like in those instances where if it's the spouse concealed the fact that he or she was married, I think we will definitely be able to bring that forward as a defense. So in those
Right.
instances, I don't foresee any fine, or even if any, it will be very minimal. So it's viewed on a case-to-case basis. So there's always room for to argue that fact.
Okay, all right. So there is another new question posted by Yinsen, but I will come back to that later. I have other question that is in the slide though that I want to direct it to Piya, because this
Yes.
question is about court related thing. So the one question is about, does that mean emotional infidelity are not protected by court? Basically, that's the question.
Okay, so to answer that question, actually, no, it is not.
All
So,
right. Okay.
if you actually found your spouse having an emotional affair, you found text messages of him confessing or of herself confessing that they
Mm,
love this person and they wish they married them and they wish they had their babies. If you
mm,
have no photographs or no videos, no proof of sexual intercourse, you
mhm.
cannot file for adultery. You cannot claim, that the marriage broke down due to adultery. So unfortunately, it's not protected in the family.
Right. Okay. And another question is, does the confession to adultery need to happen in court, or can it be over text, recorded, etc.? What if the cheating party retract their statement after?
Okay, so what usually happens is a very good question. So what usually happens is, so for example, the admission doesn't necessarily have to be in court. So sometimes the confession can be via text message or could be through a conversation. Maybe the spouse is recording it. So
Mhm.
and the husband or the wife agreed that okay, yes, I had an affair and all of that. So what will happen is this evidence will be admitted in court during trial. So when we go for a full-blown trial, it will be part of the bundle of evidence. So what happens is when something is part of the bundle of evidence during the trial, the trial date, the evidence will be put before the court. And the person who made the confession, so the husband or the wife, will need to confirm, did you say this? When did you say this? So is this your voice? Can you confirm that this is you? So in that instance, of course, when they're in the witness box, as you mentioned, as the question posed, they can retract their statement, but you need to have a very reasonable, a plausible explanation for that. So you can't just say something and then come back to court and say that you want to retract it because so it's a bit different from the confession that you would have in criminal cases where you've been remanded, you're in court, you're in the police station and you are expected, you the police officers are trying to get a confession out of you. That's
Mm,
different from the confession in regards to a family proceeding. So here what I mean is basically confessing to your spouse that you made a mistake, you had an affair, and then later when there's proof of that, either text message or a voice recording, and when it's put forward to you, and if you want to say that that's not me, I didn't mean to say that, you have to have a very reasonable explanation as to why did you even agree to it in the first place.
mm. Okay, all right. So basically, I think that's all the court related questions. So I will bring up some that is more for me by just looking at the time as well. So I will only choose certain questions because some of it I did talk about it throughout the session. So I think I do not have to go into that detail. But there is one question. Maybe I answer the e-send one first in the chat here. What if spouse is unattracted to partner because of physical appearance? For example, partner put on a lot of weight, right? So this is something quite common as well. I do get this from client that say, oh, but my partner is not attractive anymore, no more sexy, don't want to lose weight, ask her to lose weight, ask him to lose weight, don't want to lose weight, those kind of thing. That's why I don't feel attracted anymore to my partner. I usually will go deeper than that because is that really the only reason why you love your partner? Is that the only reason why you want to have sex with partner? Is it really that's the only reason, right? Usually you will notice there's other things behind it actually. Like I do have one client who actually came in with this particular issue actually. But after I went through 1-2 session with the client, what I noticed is they have a lot of tension in their relationship actually. They argue a lot. The wife was very emotional kind of person. So he feel very hard to communicate to the wife, right? And yes, the wife did put weight as well, but that wasn't actually the main reason why he is unattracted to the partner anymore. It was because the negative vibe that he kept on getting from the partner that also reduced his need to want to be connected. Like I mentioned just now, if you every time argue with your partner, do you want to have sex with your partner, right? Even though your partner will like, come and have sex with me lah, like after argue with you and say, I want to have sex with you. But if you are the receiving end of every time getting bombarded with bomb and bullet and everything, you wouldn't want to have sex with the person, even though they are sexy and what. Also, sometimes you wouldn't want to have sex with them because of the negative vibe that you get, right? So I would say go deeper, ask more questions about it, because I think some of them are therapists. So some of the question I'm getting is from the therapist question. So one of the question is, as a therapist, if our clients are the co-responder, do we have the responsibility to inform our client that this is against the law? So I just want to confirm with Piya, is this considered against the law, actually, like adultery?
Sorry about that. No, it's not. As I mentioned, it's not illegal. So meaning that you cannot be
So it's not under penal code, right?
Yes, correct. So technically, you can't be put in jail. You will never go into jail. It's not a criminal offense,
Yeah.
but you will have to pay a lot of money. So you're paying damages, and you will be brought in as a third party, which can be unpleasant, lah.
Yeah.
Especially you yourself are married, you have kids yourself, so the situation is unpleasant.
So actually, so based on from a therapist point of view, you can let the client know that there are this kind of proceeding in terms of under the family law, under like the family law, right? That people can actually, the party can actually sue you for being the chorus, for being the party, the third party, but it's not under the penal code actually. So it's more like giving awareness as a therapist. Since you come for this kind of session, you can educate your client that there is such thing that people can actually sue you, like the husband or the wife can actually sue you. Do you still want to go with this, right? Do you still want to be a third party in the relationship, knowing that they are married, right? Or knowing that they found out about this and causing them relationship damage and divorce and things like that. So it's just education. For therapists in this particular case, it's more of education to them lah. All right. I think, is it okay if we take one more question, Piya?
Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
okay. All right. So I think I will choose this one. Okay. So this one is also more on therapy related question. So I understand that couples often visit you as a last ditch effort to save their marriage. Have you ever encountered a situation where the couple was better off separating? How do you know when to give up? Okay, so this is a very good, interesting question, which a lot of therapists, couple therapists will encounter this. Like, how do you know whether to give up on the relationship as well, right? So I would say that I have encountered few couples that you can see that breaking up might be better solution for them rather than staying in, especially if there's a lot of um especially if there's physical or emotional abuse related. That one, of course, you would need to find ways. You need to make sure that there's ways to help the couple to be safe, or help one party to be safe, right? So it's better off separating if there is that kind of abuse happening, right? But when it comes to just relationship like cheating and things like that, how do you know whether it's better off separating? I would say it's just ask the couple. I wouldn't say ask the couple, but I would say you will need to analyze the relationship itself and to see what option they're willing to take, because both options will be hurtful for them. Both options will hurt the relationship and hurt themselves, right? Being together may also hurt each other. Being separated may hurt you personally, right? Because you may want this relationship to work, but then it didn't work. You were hoping for a best marriage in your life, or a good marriage, or married until end of life, but it didn't work. So all your expectation has crumbled. You will get hurt as well for deciding to give up this relationship, right? So in that sense is to check in with the couple. Are they willing to work with this? Are they willing to commit? we try to give them, like sometimes when one couple is in, one couple is 1 foot out, right? I will always try to negotiate, like in terms of, do you want to give this another try for like 3 months? Like, let's give this a 3 months trial. If we try to commit fully in this 3 months and things is not changing, nothing can be saved, then okay, then we can see if the other alternative is a better option for this relationship, right? Especially if it comes with kids involved. Usually that's the one that's usually making it harder for them to decide whether they should divorce or whether they should stay together, because there's children involved, right? But if got children involved, that also could be a good reason for them to try to work it out again, to find common ground again, to build the trust again, and not to give up because you want to be a better parent for your children, right? So it's come back to, are they wanting, do they want to commit or not in whatever method that we are going to teach them? Are they willing to commit and change? If they are not willing to commit and change, that's where we might need to be truthful to them and let them know that I can't work with you if one person is not willing to commit and change as well. Sometimes we just need to be blunt with them. Even I can't help you. I'm not a magician. We are a therapist, is not a magician. We cannot just swing the one and then you will be back together. No, the work also comes back to the client. Client need to work. If they don't want to work, they don't want to change themselves for the relationship, we also can't do anything basically. And that's where we can let them know that I can't help you if none of you want to change, right? So no, it's not saying we are giving up, but it's more like telling them the truth that I can't do anything. But if you want to change, then I can work with you. Okay, so it's more on communicating with your client, right? Communication, always very important. Everything need to communicate. In terms of other question, I won't cover because of the time, but I did mention it throughout the session as well. So I hope that clears some of the question that you have as well. So a lot of, basically, we just need to remember that if one person doesn't want to resolve their relationship, one person don't want to change, one person don't want to commit in the relationship, it's very hard for the relationship to change. So then you need to talk to the other partner. If your partner really don't want to change, are you willing to accept that? Are you willing to still continue stay in this relationship, this marriage, right? Whatever relationship you are in, right? If you're still willing, then you just need to know that your partner will not change. Don't put that expectation that your partner will change, basically, right? So I will go around this area lah, in that sense. Okay, if you have any other question, you can just PM us, I guess, if you have any other question, and when we will reply from there on.
Yes. I'm pretty sure, if any one of you have any questions that, you would like to ask us, if you feel like, you just thought about it, in the next couple of days, please don't hesitate to drop us a message. I believe, Andrea, you're open to answering questions as well.
Yep.
And we appreciate once again all of you. It's 9:48 at night, and all of you have given your time, and I hope that you are able to take away valuable insights and information. And we hope that we can actually do more of these talks. I think both me and Andrea have very similar, mission, which is we want to normalize conversations about sex and relationships and marriages. Essentially, the focus is so that everybody can have a healthy relationship. So thank
Yeah.
you everyone once again for coming by this evening and spending the time with us. We hope to see all of you soon, and good night. Thank
Yeah.
you, Andrea, once again.
Yes, thank you, Piya, for doing this as well, and thank you everyone for staying until this late as well. All right, yeah, actually I thought they will leave halfway through, but yeah, they actually stay all the way until the end of the talk. So it's like very good people.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much, everyone, for your very, very nice comments. It's so nice to see everybody saying that they've learned a lot and it was very insightful.
Yeah. So any therapist here, you can always just find me if you have more questions of how to help your clients. All right.
Thank you. Have a good night,
All
everyone.
right. Bye
Bye.
everyone. Take care.